Carlos had always been singled out for being gay, even before he knew it himself. His family were constantly reprimanding him, as were his teachers and the priests. By the time he realized they were right, he knew he was in a very dangerous place. While there were no laws against being gay, the gangs were dangerous and controlled the country more than the government. When he got to 18 and still didn't have a girlfriend, his family knew what it meant and kicked him out. He moved into the barrios and tried to find work, but because people could tell he was gay, nobody would hire him. Because there was no other work, he started meeting men who would pay for sex at night in a park in the city. He was trying to save to leave the country, but paying protection money to the gangs took a lot of his earnings. When rumors spread that the gangs were going to cleanse his neighborhood of gay men, he knew he was out of time. He borrowed enough for a ticket from a loan shark who said he would die if he didn't pay it back, but he knew he would be gone by then. When he got to England, he carried on selling sex until one customer, Alejandro, offered him somewhere to stay. Over time, Alejandro and Carlos became close. Alejandro was European, so could work, and Carlos could stop selling sex. Eventually, they formed a relationship, and Alejandro helped Carlos to understand how to apply for asylum. When he met his caseworker, however, they asked lots of questions about him being gay. Because it had always been a problem for him, and he was still ashamed of it, he panicked and couldn't answer their questions properly. They said they didn't believe he was gay, which seemed crazy to him as everyone else always seemed to have known, even when he didn't want them to. He went home and set up the phone Alejandro had given him to film them in bed together. If they didn't believe he was gay, he'd have to show them. When Alejandro saw the camera, he laughed until he saw the expression on Carlos's face. He asked what was happening, and Carlos explained that he found it hard to talk about being gay, so they didn't believe him, and he was going to prove it. Alejandro was alarmed and told Carlos he was sure that they wouldn't expect him to do that. He looked online to find out if he was right. Alejandro found out that they were never allowed to ask for evidence like that, but they used to accept it. They don't accept it anymore. While they would still need evidence that Carlos was gay, this could not be sexually explicit. Alejandro wrote a letter talking about his relationship with Carlos for the Home Office. Together they prepared an album of photos where it was clear that they were a couple, including the few dates they'd been able to afford and a trip to a gay bar. They put together all of their WhatsApp and iMessage conversations, and Alejandro prepared an English translation. While Carlos did still feel very awkward talking about being gay, these gave the caseworker things to ask about which he felt more comfortable with. By the end of his interview, Carlos felt much more comfortable talking about being gay, and the caseworker seemed more accepting of his story. Remember, you do need to provide the Home Office with evidence to support your claim. This cannot be sexually explicit, but should refer to any relationships you have had. Photographs and videos that do not include sex, message histories, and evidence from those who know you are all good evidence.